What's up everybody, it's Matt from Peter Glenn, and in this video we're going to talk to you about the different snowboard profiles. Basically the different way that the boards are bent from tip to tail. Let's check this out. All right, so when you're checking out snowboards, obviously they have some shaping that goes from tip to tail, and we're not talking about just the kicks. All snowboards have kicks in the nose and tail. We're talking about everywhere in between. Now, whether it's camber, rocker, flat, or some sort of hybrid, that bend in the board, it's actually gonna tell you a lot about the board and how it's gonna ride and how it's gonna react when it's on the snow. All right, so we're starting off with traditional camber. So this is basically where the middle of the board is lifted up and the tips are touching. It came from the ski industry, and basically it's there to load energy into the board. When you stand on it, you flex that camber down and the board wants to pop back, and that puts that energy into the board. The other thing that it does too is it actually makes the board a little bit more aggressive. Taking those contact points where your carve starts and where your carve ends, those are where the most of the pressure is on the snow, especially when you're up on your edge. It's basically pushing those into the snow. So no matter whether you're sitting flat or you're up on your edge, most of your pressure and your contact is right on those two edges. So it does make for a very, very aggressive board. It's also very snappy torsionally too. When you are going in and out of your turns, you're actually twisting the board. And if we take a board like this and we twist it and it snaps back, now we take and put some camber in it and twist it, it's gonna wanna snap back a lot faster. So that's the nice thing about traditional cambered boards, is that they are very, very aggressive rides, whether you're talking in and out of your turns or laying down carves. Basically, you're gonna get that super, super aggressive ride. All right, and then going from camber to camber flat, it's kind of a very, very similar idea where we're basically taking that camber. We wanna have the board be really, really powerful, lots of snap, lots of pop. But the cool thing about boards that have camber flat is that the camber doesn't go all the way to your contact points. It actually goes to an area just beyond your feet, maybe under your feet. It really depends on the board, the company. When you go camber to a flat area, you're basically creating a catch-free feel in a cambered board. So this board obviously has that camber where the middle is lifted up, but you'll notice that your contact point over here, which would usually be digging into the snow, when we load this thing up, it actually causes the tip of the board to lift up a little bit. It's basically taking those contact points that want to be in the snow and it's lifting them up off the snow. So when you're riding flat, you have a little bit nicer, easier, smoother feel. Obviously, when we tip this thing up on edge, those contact points are going into the snow, no problem. But again, when you are flat on the board, you get that extra kind of catch-free feel similar to a rocker board, but you still get the power of the camber in between your feet. The other nice thing about having that flat, no matter how big it is that when you are riding, let's say, rails, boxes, even just buttering around on the snow, it actually gives you a very, very flat area to sit on and gives you a little bit more stability. All right, then going from camber dominant boards, we're gonna get into flat profiles. So this LTR board from Burton is a great example. It is flat through the middle, and then we have a little bit of rocker up in the nose and tail. Now this is something you're gonna see mostly in those beginner intermediate boards, but there are some high-end boards out there that do have that flat rocker profile. There have been boards in the past that have been flat completely through. There might be a few out on the market, but from what I've seen, it's pretty much mostly flat with that little bit of rocker. Now, the cool thing about flat is it's very, very stable. It's very, very forgiving. If you kind of think about it, when you come down, especially on your landings, you come down and boom, you got a flat area to land on. That's gonna be super, super stable. The more flat you have, the more stability you have. And then you'll get a little bit of that rocker up in the nose and tail just to give you that nice, easy, catch-free feel. And then some of the higher end boards might have more rocker, basically to give you a little bit more float, a little bit looser feel for those high-end riders who just like that. All right, and then going from flat rocker, we're just gonna go into rockered boards. So rockered boards, you basically have the tips lifted and the middle is what's on the snow. Now with the rockered boards, there is no flat area. That's the big, big difference between flat rocker and just rocker. Now the rocker, it's very, very catch-free. It's very floaty. The other nice thing about this thing having that edge in the middle down is that you actually don't have to drive into your turns and set your carves. If you think about this, when you've got camber in the middle of the board, that's not touching. You stand here, not here. So when you tip this thing up on edge, you actually have to push the camber down a little bit. With the rockered board, since the middle is already touching and the tips are lifted, you're standing out here pushing the tips down, and you can see it doesn't take much to push those tips down. So just your body weight pushes that down. But when you go to lift this thing up on edge, you basically just toes, heels. Nice and easy. You literally just turn it like a skateboard and you get a nice, easy turn. So rocker is definitely a really cool thing. You don't see it a ton anymore. There definitely are a few boards out there. I know Arbor has some. It's a great way to actually learn to ride, but also for those higher end riders, if you like that nice, easy, looser feel, straight up rocker boards are a great way to go. All right, and then going from straight up rocker boards, we go into hybrids. And these are basically boards that are gonna have camber and rocker. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. Now when it comes down to it, there's two main bends. There's rocker camber, where you get rocker in the middle, camber up in the nose and tail, but then there's also camber rocker. So you get that camber in the middle and that rocker up in the nose and tail. With a rockered camber design, we're basically kind of getting the ride of a rockered board. We're getting that catch-free feel because that nose and tail are not getting pushed down into the snow. But then what they're doing is by putting the camber up in the nose and tail, it's actually helping to take those tips and put them a little closer to the snow. If you think about it, if you just had a rockered board and your contact point was up here, if we put camber in it, now we're bringing it down closer to the snow. So when you go to tip this thing up on edge, it wants to get on edge quicker and those points want to engage a little bit more. Also, when you lean back on this thing, you can actually load up the tail, or if you're riding switch, load up the nose, and you can really push and get a lot of snap in and out of your turn. And then also you get a lot of pop when you go to load it to spring it. And then when you go into the cambered rocker boards, it's kind of similar to the flat rocker, but we're getting the power of the camber in between your feet. So very similar, where it's actually loading up the board. When you go to pop it, you're loading up the middle. Also in and out of your turns, especially through the middle of the board. When you're twisting that thing from edge to edge, you're getting all that power that wants to snap you in and out of your turns. But then you get that rocker up in the nose and tail, and that basically gives you that catch-free feel. It also gives you a little bit more float as well. And there is one other hybrid that I like to bring up. I unfortunately don't have a board here right now, but you're gonna see it mostly in your free ride boards. And these are boards that are basically gonna be camber to rocker in the nose. So basically what they're doing is with the free ride board, and something you're probably gonna be getting into some powder, we wanna get ultimate float, but when there's no powder, we wanna make sure that that board cranks turns super aggressively. So basically they will do camber from usually the back contact point to right around the front foot. And again, it depends on the board. It might go past the front foot, but it's gonna be within this general area, and then they rocker the nose up. So what this does, that gives you all the power that you need from the camber here, and then when you get into that deeper snow, you're getting that extra lift, you're getting that extra float, because there's not a person alive that doesn't want the board to float better when you get into deeper snow. So as you can see, when it gets down to it, there's no wrong way to bend a board. They all work, and they do work for a lot of different skill levels too. Just because you're a beginner rider or a park rider or a free rider doesn't mean you have to get one specific bend. That's why companies offer all these different bends. Some of them even do, like the Burton Custom, you can get it in camber and you can get it in rocker camber, which they call Flying V. So basically just your personal preference can make a big difference. And again, it just really depends on what you like underneath your feet. The biggest thing to remember when you're comparing boards side by side is, what does it have more of? If there's more camber, the more aggressive the board's gonna be. If you get more rocker, the more catch-free and floaty and kind of skate feeling it's gonna feel. And the flatter the board is, the more stability you're gonna get. So when you are comparing boards side by side, you can look at one that maybe has a flat this wide versus one that has a flat this wide. This one's gonna be more stable. This one's gonna be a little bit more catch-free. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that you can actually have different bends for different styles of riding. You might like a camber to rocker for riding powder, and then you might like a full cambered board for riding park. There's no saying that you have to have one specific board for one specific riding style. But again, can't reiterate it enough. It's all personal preference. And if you got any questions beyond what we talked about in this video, definitely leave some comments down below. We're on there every single day trying to answer your questions. We wanna make sure we can get you into some rad gear, but most importantly, we wanna make sure it's gonna fit you and it's gonna fit your riding style. Also make sure to like, subscribe, and definitely get that bell on too so you can find out when all the new videos drop. Grab yourself a new board no matter what the bend is and get out and ride, because any day riding is a good day riding.